Ruthless Black Widow Murders number 2. Tilli had a knack for predicting when people are going to die, especially her enemies, and this ranged from adults, kids, and even animals. But was she really a psychic, or did she just have a kill calendar? What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm G, and today we are on the second case on our series of Ruthless Black Widow Murders. If you enjoyed the video, leave it a like and share with your true crime friends because that helps a ton. So Tilli Klimek was born Otelia Burek in 1976. She was born in Poland and migrated to the U.S. in a city in Chicago called Little Poland, which has the most population of Polish people living in the U.S. In 1890, when Tilli was just a teenager, she married her first husband, John Mickiewicz. And after more than 20 years of a good marriage, Tilli suddenly predicted that John was going to die. And sure enough, in 1914, John actually died on January 13th, just after a few weeks of Tilli predicting that he was going to die. The death certificate listed that John had died from heart trouble, so no one suspected foul play, and Tilli collected his life insurance up to $1,000, which in today's money would be a little over $25,000. And after 1 month of sorrow and grieving, well, Tilli decided to get married to her new guy, Joseph Roskalski. Well, as a newlywed, all you can hope for is a successful marriage, and I think Joseph really got that because after a whopping 3 months of a successful marriage, Tilli again predicted that her husband was going to die. And certainly, Joseph took ill and died on the 20th of May that same year, and people just knew that must be it. Tilli is a psychic and she can predict people's deaths. Besides, she had done it 2 times successfully. And again, Tilli got some money from her late husband. She got $1,200 in cash, which would be around $30,000 in today's money. And she also got some of his life insurance, which was a little bit over $700 at that time, which put her just close to $20,000. So she had gotten about $50,000 from her second husband's death. Now, with all the money Tilli has made, she was hoping for some love in her life. So she took her then boyfriend to another state for a romantic trip. And during that trip, she was hoping that he's probably going to pop the question and he'll be husband number 3. But then during their talk, she kind of let things slip, and he was getting the notion that her first 2 husbands did not die of natural causes. So he was reluctant and did not want to be husband number 3. And this obviously pissed Tilli off. And so she threatened to have him arrested, claiming that he had taken her to another state to traffic her. Well, all of that ended because her then boyfriend ended up dying just like the first 2 husbands. So even though he did not become a husband, he joined the other 2 husbands, and obviously Tilli had predicted his death, and she became so sad, or at least that's what people think, and she was like, I hate those dreams that make me see all of their deaths and it keeps happening. Yeah, that's just how she was acting like. It had been a really long and hard year for Tilli, so she took a break, and in 1919, she married her 3rd husband, Frank Kupachek. 2 years into the marriage in 1921, Tilli was not having a good time. She was not enjoying this marriage, and soon she had a boyfriend on the side. Soon after having a boyfriend, her husband took ill, and Tilli spent her time right next to her husband, just stitching up and knitting the mourning dress she was going to wear at his funeral. But that was not the biggest of her problem. Her landlady was actually Tilli's biggest problem because Tilli had found a coffin that was on sale. So she had brought the newspaper to her landlady and was like, hey, this coffin is on sale and I want to buy it and store it in the basement. But the landlady was not having it because her husband was not dead yet. Tilli could not understand how unreasonable her landlady was being. Besides, she had explained to her that her husband just had 2 inches to live. This small, he was so close to dying. So she should just let her keep the knockoff coffin in the basement and wait for him. I do understand marriage is till death do us part, but if this was not a sign for his family to come get him, then I don't understand what else should be. I mean, the first commitment should be staying alive before the marriage. Those were certainly different times because, I mean, a lot of us, just one phone call and your family will come jack you out of there. So obviously Frank died, and his death certificate claimed that he had died from pneumonia. It actually said somewhere that when Frank died, Tilli pulled his ear and was like, you devil, now you won't get up again. And also her landlady reported that she was playing jolly music, she was just having fun and happy just a few days after he had died. That's someone who is supposed to be in like mourning and everything. So after celebrating Frank's death in her apartment, Tilli obviously wore the heart that she had been sewing on his sick bed, and she did get that coffin that she had always wanted and used during his funeral. And after his death, she inherited about $17,000, which was like 600 and something dollars at that time. During Frank's funeral, there was this new guy, Joseph Klimek, and he was 50 something, a widower, and was looking for a new bride. Unfortunately, Tilli did not meet the new guy there, but a few weeks later, Joseph and Tilli met, and Joseph married Tilli, and he said that he married Tilli for her cooking. So whatever she put in that food was pretty tasty. So Tilli's family actually tried to save Joseph. They were like, hey, you're marrying a woman with a past, just like be careful. And Joseph was like, nah, it's fine. So after they married, he said that Tilli tore up all her old letters, all the pictures of her previous husbands, and even her man friends, so her boyfriends, and she had Joseph's picture hanging up there. So Joseph was the new king of the house, and he was really happy with his new wife. Apparently, after being married to Joseph Klimek, Tilli's marriage was still not happy for her. I'm wondering if she thought the fourth time was a charm or something. So she confided in her cousin Nellie, and she was like, she's not happy in this marriage. So Nellie was like, okay, divorce the guy. And Tilli was like, no, I'll get rid of him some other way. And it's reported that Nellie then gave Tilli a rat poison called rough on rats and probably humans. The active ingredient on rough on rats was arsenic powder, and not so surprisingly, in September of 1922, Joseph took ill, and obviously Tilli predicted that he was going to die. So Joseph's brother, John Klimek, finally a family member steps in, suspected that his brother Joseph was not really naturally ill, because just a few days prior, Joseph's 2 dogs had died, and those dogs were really healthy dogs. They had suddenly just passed on, and his brother Joseph was having certain symptoms. He was always complaining of excruciating pain in his stomach. He had like garlic breath, and his legs had lost the ability to move. With his brother showing all of these symptoms that were very similar to arsenic poison, John called the family doctor and made sure that Joseph was taken to the hospital, where he ended up spending 3 months, and fortunately for him, he survived. And yes, they did detect arsenic poison all over his body. As Joseph was recovering in the hospital, Klimek got arrested, and the officer who arrested her, this is what she told him: the next one I want to cook dinner for is you. So when she was arrested, her husband was still at the hospital, so they brought her to the hospital to see the husband, and he was just trying to ask why, what did I do? And Tilli was like, don't bother me anymore. She was just literally done with him. And Joseph asked a nurse to get him a glass of water, and Tilli told the nurse that if he was being any trouble, she should take like a board and hit his head with it. So she was literally still planning to kill him, even though she was arrested. And after all of those evil words, she kissed him goodbye before she left. So Tilli finally confessed to having fed Joseph arsenic poison, and she also told the police where she had gotten it from, her cousin Nellie. While she was still with the police, an anonymous letter reached the police, and they were like, do you want to look into the 3 other husbands? And so they exhumed the bodies and found a good quantity of arsenic poison in them, and the soil surrounding their bodies did not have any. So obviously that's what they had died from. So the police also took a little dive into Nellie's life and discovered, after exhuming the body of her first husband, that he too had died from arsenic poison. Wow, it runs in the family. And so the police took the time to look into some other suspicious deaths that had also occurred in the family. So there were 3 cousins of Tilli's that had died within like a few years apart. And that is because their mom had a falling out with Tilli, and they had had dinner at Tilli's house. And usually after having dinner with Tilli and they fall sick, Tilli nurses after them and obviously predicts their death. And so she looks like this good aunt taking care of the sick kids, and also this aunt who is burdened with the curse of predicting people's deaths. Nellie had had a set of twins, and those twin kids had died a month apart from each other, and they died a year before their father died. And the kids probably died because their father, the first husband, had refused to acknowledge them. And also Nellie had had a granddaughter who was 2 years old and was in her care and had also died. So some of Tilli's other exploits were some 2 neighbors who had an argument with her, and later she gave them candy, and they had died suspiciously. In total, these women were suspected to have poisoned at least 20 people, 14 of whom had actually died. And soon later, there was another lady who was suspected of murder. I mean, this person survived, but the son suspected her of trying to poison him, and she too was arrested, and it became like the third murderer behind Tilli, and soon Tilli was named the high priestess of Bluebird Clique, which was like a little poisoning ring where she was the queen. A lot of other wives were arrested and released, but like Tilli and Nellie were the ones who had confirmed kills. And Tilli was the high priestess of Bluebird Clique, while Nellie was the Lady Bluebird. Tilli and Nellie were now in custody, and Tilli found the time to have some fun while in custody, and her idea of fun was always to taunt Nellie and deceive her and tell her, hey, today they're going to take you to go and get hanged. And Nellie was absolutely terrified that she was going to be killed, and Tilli enjoyed doing that to her a lot. Reporters tried to get as much of the case as they could, and they had interviewed a lot of people, Joseph, Tilli's family, and when they spoke with Tilli, they did not get too much out of her, but they were able to spend time with her, and their description of Tilli was really unflattering. So they said, as opposed to a lot of husband killers that had been acquitted or tried in Chicago, Tilli was not this pretty looking lady. She was not beautiful, not charming, and she looked like a squat and only spoke broken English, even though she had lived in the country since she was like 1 year old. Surprisingly, Tilli was tried just for the murder of her last husband, the third one, and the fourth husband was there to testify how his food always tasted funny, and Tilli had pressured him to get more life insurance all the time. During the trial, Tilli made sure to wear the hat she had knitted for her last husband's funeral. After the trial, Nellie was acquitted, even though she had supplied Tilli with the poison. They found her not guilty of that. Her kids had testified against her, but they still found her not guilty because they said she was so simple-minded. At least that's what the psychiatric evaluation had stated, that the women were simple-minded. Maybe they did not really get a really good evaluation because their English was not good and the assessment was done in English instead of Polish. But yeah, she was acquitted after spending just 1 year in prison, which was the time when her trial was going on, which was the time Tilli also used to taunt her, while Tilli was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, which was the harshest sentence that had ever been inflicted on a woman in that county. So I do feel like Tilli deserved to be in prison, especially because she most likely had murdered all of those previous people, including her previous husbands. But the sad part about the whole story was that Tilli was mainly found guilty because people assumed that she did not look beautiful. Remember when I said a lot of women had been tried and acquitted? It was in those days, it was mostly beautiful looking women who would just go into the court and the jury is going to find them not guilty of murder. Even though they're going to have like evidence and everything, they're still going to find them not guilty because they considered them pretty. But Tilli and the other 4 women who had been found guilty of killing their husbands were considered ugly. That was it for me today. What do you guys think about the case? Let me know your thoughts in the comments and suggestions for future cases. Remember to be the best version of yourself. See you tomorrow with another video just like this. Remember to check this playlist on the right for some of the most gruesome crimes ever committed, and this playlist on your left to get the full series of the Ruthless Black Widow murder cases.